Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Today's session is about project management. Do we have anyone who is PMP certified? No one? Anyone knows what's the PMP? Have you heard of PMP at least?
Project management professional.
Yeah. So basically, today's session is about project management. Did training Najita. Only the name. Okay. So project management professional is a certification for project management globally. It is the most recognized certification globally for project management, whether for construction, IT, or anything. So anything that involves a project is the most prestigious is the PMP. The PMP is run by the PMI. PMI is the Project Management Institute. So why am I saying all of this? The PMI is a reference for all project management professionals across the globe. Similarly, IFMA is a reference for facility management. Good to know this, Ahmed. So today's session is about project management. As we said in the previous sessions, that you as a facility manager will have to deal with projects as part of the business. Okay, our core business is more about operations and day-to-day operations, which is not the projects. But project management is an integral part of facility management. Why you need projects? Due to many reasons. Upgrades, changes, modifications, movement from one place to another is a project. We will see what's the definition of a project. We will see IFMA's philosophy in project management and other details as well. So to start with, we start by the definition of a project. What is a project? A project is a specific unit of work that when completed, just a minute, let me put the pointer option. Okay, a project is a specific unit of work that when completed produce an outcome or achieve an objective. So it can be a physical outcome. You can make a project to construct an additional building in itself, or an objective. For example, the objective is to high-tech services. Anyhow, so the objective is, for example, let's say we want to upgrade the facility into a digital facility. Okay, but we want to install a new software. We want to improve the air quality inside the building. So this is an objective. The objective can be abstract, like forecasting future facility needs. So let's say, for example, I'm working for Google and I want to undertake a project to understand what's the facility needs for Google in the next 5 years. Okay? Or they can be tangible as renovation, new construction, and demolition. Project can also be defined by their common attributes. What's the difference between a project and running operations? Project is finite. It has a specific beginning and a specific end. It's not an ongoing continuous process. So facility management is an ongoing process, but project is something with a specific beginning and a specific end. Even it can be 10-year project, it can be one-day project. Yeah, let's say replacement of a window AC. This is a few-hour project. It's a project on itself. It's a small project, but it's a project. Usually projects, when we talk about projects, we talk about complex processes that involve numerous sequence tasks. Unique. A project is unique. There are no two projects the same. maybe similar things, but usually they produce a unique set. Projects are goal-oriented, means they are designed to achieve a specific objective. We will see that projects have limitations, and usually they are, this is the triangle of this. They're limited in scope, they're limited in time, and they're limited in budget. So scope, what is the scope of the project? What's the time frame? And what's the budget and resources? They are usually team-oriented tasks, which members of teams often come from cross-sectional areas. They are made up of temporary teams. So usually project teams are temporary. If I want to, in the same facility, let's say I want to upgrade the ELV system there, or I want to, it's a different process than if I want to implement a new CFM software. So I will use different people. I will use different team members. So the team can be inside, or I can even subcontract the whole project outside. So they are required to produce one or more deliverables. Facility project management might be initiated to implement elements of a strategic facility plan or a master plan. We saw how, if you remember the strategy module, we talked about how the corporate strategy is on top. And under that, we will have the marketing, we will have the HR, we will have the manufacturing, and we will have facility management. So all these things. So the business unit will have a strategy, and that business unit, we will have, if you remember, what we call them, like a portfolio. So if I am doing it for a big company such as Procter & Gamble or Nestle, I will have hundreds of units of facilities across the globe. And then we saw how then it goes into, the strategy goes into each one with a master plan. If you remember, a master plan is a site-specific plan, and then we implement tactics there. So when implementing tactics, we use projects. So for example, the company strategy on top, let's say for Google, was to promote sustainable practices across the organization. They wanted to secure that all their facilities, sustainable practices. So they did it across the different things. Maybe the marketing needed to market and highlight that. They need to brand it like this. Maybe the HR was involved in it because they wanted to deploy specialists in that, and so on. And then as a facility management, let's say as a separate business unit with businesses across the globe, let's say, we can undertake, for example, one project to upgrade all the facilities that we own into renewable sources, to make them self-sustainable projects. So this is an example how it can happen to implement the tactical plans. Projects can be an act in response to a mandate from a project sponsor. We will understand who is the project sponsor. A project sponsor is someone in or outside the organization who is sponsoring the project, who is initiating the project. The project sponsor is the one who approves the project. They initiate it. They are not the project manager. A project sponsor is the one who usually appoints a project manager. Okay, so the project sponsor, let's say the client, they want to come and say, I'm having a hospital. They want to upgrade or renovate the reception area. So this is a project. And that project, as we said, should have a certain time frame. They want to do it in the next 3 months. They have a budget. You have, for example, $500,000 real to spend it. And the scope, what's the scope? Scope is limited to upgrade of the full reception area, including the installation of new monitoring system and whatever. So the scope is identified and defined there. Projects can be done to resolve problems or implement performance improvements. So if I want to implement a certain measure, we said that the result doesn't have to be something tangible, something built. I can want performance improvement. Let's say I want the company took a measure on a strategic level to reduce operational costs wherever they can, and it reflects, it comes to FM, and then we have to, for example, have a target of improving performance by 20%. So this is the objective, and there can be a project to do that. Address the results of programming. You remember that word. If you don't, I will repeat it again. Programming is the means of collecting requirements. So collecting requirements can be a project. So for example, I want to understand where my company wants to be in the next 5 years, what buildings they want. Or let's say I want to, there was a strategic, I'm a property owning company, a big property owning company, let's say Amar, and I wanted to make sure that I'm providing the best service in the country in terms of facilities. So I want to go and collect the requirements. I will go and, if you remember, programming can be done by surveys, by interviews, or by observation, as well as other means, but these are main means. So I can go and survey most of my residents of my properties, and this can be a project. I can collect the requirements. What will it take for the company to become the #1 choice of residents across a country? We can use projects to implement planned changes. For example, compliance with the code. So an example here is that, for example, the Ministry of Interior recently required public facilities to have a certain type of cameras, and so the code has changed. So for me to comply with the code, I will initiate a project, for example, to upgrade all the CCTV cameras. Projects can be a project to respond to unplanned changes. For example, unscheduled lease termination. Let's say there was a business decision and they wanted to shut down their office in Ghana, for example. So there's a lease termination. Facility management will handle the project of winding up the facilities, decommissioning the facilities, and shifting the staff somewhere else. So they can, or it can be, for example, a project. There is a chiller. I have 7 chillers. One of them broke down. Okay, so I can make a separate project to replace one chiller, because it's something that requires certain time, certain resources, certain costs. Common type of facility management projects: forecasting future facility needs. We covered that. Facility audits. I, as a facility manager, and we talked about facility audits. Facility audits are done to check the current condition of the facilities, see if there is a gap from the requirements, see how for example, I have initiated energy optimization. Are we complying with that? Are the facilities which I have meeting the requirements? Are they providing to clients the required services? So I can, if I'm a part of a big hotel group, such as Marriott, let's say, I go and do facility audits of all the Marriott hotels across the Middle East. I go and check each and every one of them to see if they meet the requirements of the mother company. They can be new construction projects, as we mentioned, an addition of a new building, or even addition of a partition, renovation, major equipment replacement. We mentioned that for the chiller. Churn project. What's a churn? Churn is the rate of movement of staff within an organization. So a churn project is a project. Maybe you think, okay, changing offices, even on a smaller scale, if you're a company which is having 20 people and if you have had the experience of shifting offices, you understand that it's a little bit, can be a complex undertaking. So what about then you have a bank, let's say, and you want to shift them from a building to a building. It requires different setup, different IT requirements, different security requirements. So it's a project in itself. It requires decoration and so on. And then you have organizational change management projects. As we said, that the organization, for example, decided to abolish an old software and utilize a new CRM. That's a project. Interior programming and space planning project. Remember, programming is collecting requirements. So we have a building and we are requested to make it into an office. So we go and we do programming. It means we go and talk all the business unit heads, understand what they want, and come up with a design based on that. Procurement of goods and services. So procurement, like let's say for a big thing, let's say they addressed us that they want to procure new gensets, a new genset with a complete power station, redundant power station. So it's a project in itself because it requires several things to have it done. Demolitions is another project. So we see that there are a lot of projects in FM that can be undertaken other than our day-to-day roles. Last time we covered operations. Today we are covering project management. What is project management? Project management is the coordination of people, funds, and resources. Is the coordination of, someone wants to say something? Samuel, please mute your... So project management is the coordination of people, funds, resources, tasks, and approvals required to accomplish an objective. So the objective is the project that we want to reach. It includes developing project plans and planning, providing oversight in their execution to assure resources are used as planned, timelines are met, and the desired outcomes are achieved. Despite all the project management science that has been going on globally, less than 40% of projects are completed on time and on budget. So, and we're talking about the larger projects. So you see that there is always a risk. That's why project management is a very sought after science, because people are trying to make sure that whatever project they undertake, they succeed in. That's why there was the need of an organization such as the Project Management Institute to come and study what makes a successful project. What can we do? What are the regulations or the best practices that we can follow to provide proper planning? So you see that project management includes developing a project plan, executing the project, and making sure that the project goes according to plan, and that the ultimate goal of the project is met. A project is considered successful when it's signed off by the stakeholder or the approver of the project. If it's a client, if it's our internal employees, or any other person or entity that wants to sign on it. So if we are looking to make sure that the project is completed as required and the project timelines are met. So if it's a 2-year project, it should be a 2-year project, and that the resources utilized, let's say you have an allocated $10 million, that we stay within budget. Project management versus regular FM duties. For facility management, project management is a subset of a full set of FM skills. A facility manager is not a project manager. He is a project manager, or she, plus many additional things. Okay. When facility managers are managing regular FM activities such as operation and maintenance, they apply a broad range of general management tools and techniques. When acting as a project manager, facility managers narrow their, you see that we are seeing that how a facility manager, IFMA, is trying to groom facility managers across the different disciplines. They're supposed to know human resources, they're supposed to know strategy, they're supposed to know a little bit of finance, they're supposed to know their core operations, and they're supposed to know facility project management. So facility managers wear different hats to make sure that in the end the facility runs as required. When acting as a project manager, facility managers narrow this focus to key tasks. One, using scheduling to provide a high probability that the plan is realistic. So we deploy scheduling. We are ensuring that cost estimates are realistic, focusing on labor productivity and job costs. So here we are talking initially about the planning. So in the planning phase, we are trying to secure that the project plan is realistic, that the cost estimate is realistic, that the time frame is realistic, So if the owner of a hotel comes and says, how long will it take us to replace a chiller? And we tell them it's 2 days, whereas it might need 3 months, then we are not, or we tell them it's 2 weeks, whereas it needs 3 months, this is not proper project management. And then we are using scheduling to provide a higher probability that the plan is realistic. We are focusing, during execution, we are focusing on labor productivity and job costs. So we have a certain budget, and as per the project management plan, we want to see that and ensure that we are maintaining these costs online. Tracking permissions, material, and equipment, and then ultimately ensuring that stakeholders are satisfied. A project is created for a specific reason, and we want to make sure that the project is delivered to the satisfaction of the parties for which the project is intended to serve. They can be internal or they can be external. So internal, let's say we want to improve productivity, and then we change the processes. This can be a project, and then we go and tell management, this is it, are you satisfied? Or they can be external. For example, we are doing a project to secure that we comply with the new Ministry of Interior, and then the ultimate party approving that project is the Ministry of Interior. A facility manager role on a given project may be as the project manager. We can be a project manager. Okay, so let's say it's an internal project that I can do from my internal resources. I am managing a hospital, and then a project came, let's say, for the renovation of the, the reception area. And then this is something that I can do with my team and with some minor subcontractors here and there. Maybe I can be the project manager, or I can be a team member. So, for example, there's a company-wide effort to ensure that the rollout of a new CRM software, I can be just a team member. So I can be a team member in charge only of the scope of that big project across the organization inside FM. Maybe someone else is a project manager, so I can just be a project member. Or as the person accountable for project success who selects, hires, contracts, and manages / supervises the project managers. So I can even hire a project manager. So if it's a specialized project, let's say I want to install or make a new building, then maybe I'm not the right person. I don't have the right time to do that. I have other things to do. So I'm the person who selects, hires, or contracts. Say I go to another contractor and I make sure that their project manager, I select a proper project manager, and maybe even put someone as a project manager from my team, if we're talking about the huge facilities, and to make sure that the project gets delivered as per requirements. The following skills are generally desired in the role of project management: leadership, experience and self-assessment, recruiting, management, communication, and problem solving. The facility, we will see as we on the next slide that IFMA basically recognizes, same like there are, you are aware of bodies such as the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME, or the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, or the IEEE for electrical engineers, or so these are international organizations which set standards relative to their specific industry. So the ultimate reference, for example, for refrigeration and cooling is ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating Refrigeration. So IFMA is the reference for facility management globally, or one of the most prominent references. Similarly, they recognize the Project Management Institute, which is the institute which makes the PMP certification or gives that. They recognize it as the specialized body which provides all the knowledge. So IFMA doesn't reinvent the wheel. They say that we follow the requirements and recommendations of the Project Management Institute. But Ajish, what do you mean EPA, Environmental Protection Agency? Yes, you are right. So they follow the PMI, okay, and there is a customization to meet the requirements. So we see that this whole module, those of you who are PMP certified or have undergone the PMI training, will understand it very easily. But it's with a little bit tweaked for facility managers. Facility managers must understand that when delegating work to others, it's important not to interfere with the subordinates' authority and daily management work. The philosophy of the Project Management Institute is that a project manager is mainly involved in planning and in ensuring that the project is managed according to the plan. Their job is to communicate. That's why communication is very important. Their job is not to actually go and be as much involved in the execution as much as supervising the execution and making sure that everything goes according to the plan. Here we see what I said earlier. One of the oldest and most widely accepted standard project management processes is the project management body of knowledge. So the Project Management Institute have as their as their collective procedures into project management, they cover this under something which is called the Project Management Body of Knowledge, the PM book. Okay. The PM book includes a set of project management knowledge areas for managing a project. What are these knowledge areas? The knowledge areas include scope management. So we see that each aspect of the project management has been done separately. So there's a scope management, there's a cost management, there is an HR management, there is risk management, there is shareholders management, there is procurement management, communications management, quality management, time management, and integration management. What we do when we develop a project management plan, okay, a project management plan is the first step in which we are taking in the planning. So initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. There are 5 steps in the project management. They are initiating. So initiating is that when we announce the project, we put the broad guidelines for the project. We make something that's called the project charter, which we will be covering next. And then we give the go-ahead for the project. Okay. Once we give the go-ahead for the project, the second phase starts, which is the planning. In the planning project management phase, we develop a project management plan. This project management plan has all the plans for each and every aspect of the project. So we have a scope management plan, we have a cost management plan, we have an HR management plan, risk management plan, stakeholder management plan, procurement plan, communication plan, project quality management plan, time management plan, and an integration management plan. The thing is with the Project Management Institute is that when they devised the project management body of knowledge, they are considering a huge project. And typically they define it with a project with a value of above $100 million, which is spanning several countries. What does that mean is that sometimes it's too big, but they say that we develop the philosophy, and you, depending on the size of the project, depending on the criticality of the project, okay, you can decide into how much you want to dwell into everything. So the scope management plan, maybe a few pages, let's say, if the scope is very clear. So for example, if the scope is the replacement of a chiller, it doesn't really require that much elaboration. Whereas if the scope is to add a new accommodations inside Qatar Foundation, no, that's a different thing, and that needs a separate scope management plan. This process of tailoring, okay, the projects, the project management body of knowledge to the specific project that we have, we call it tailoring. It means that we are fitting these requirements according to our needs. On big projects, you need separate cost management plan, HR management plan, risk management plan. But on other projects, you can decide what to keep, what to remove, and so on. Project cycles. So again, this is like the other modules. IFMA takes, they require you to know the basics and what applies to FM. It's not like a detail. That's another, you know, the preparatory course for PMI is a 40-hour course, and that's the preparatory course. So you're not expected to know everything, but at least the basic things are, as usual, highlighted in this course and in these slides. Project cycles. So we talk about project cycles. The traditional project cycle is what we call a waterfall model. A waterfall, it starts from a beginning and goes to an end, and it doesn't go back. So usually we collect the requirements, we make the design. So let's say we want to make a renovation of a building. Someone wants to change the building from office building into a serviced up offices building. So we collect the requirements. What does the client need? We do the design, we do the development, execution. Okay, this is for regular, this is a software thing, but let's say it's a construction project. We collect the requirements, we do the design, we do the execution, we do the testing and commissioning and handover. This is the traditional waterfall. We don't go back. Traditional waterfall model illustrates a set of phases that flows from one phase to the other without any concurrent phases. So there is no overlapping. There is no concurrency. It means that once the design is over, only I start execution. In reality, projects are not like that. In reality, the projects run more as an iterative model. What does iteration mean? Iteration, it means that wherever needed, I go back. So usually what happens is that, let's say I am commissioned by a client to do a project for changing the offices into serviced office. I collect the requirements. So I initiate the project. I do the plan, correct the requirements, do the planning, and do the design, and start the implementation. What happens normally is that the requirements are not 100% established in the design. Maybe during execution, I start execution the project, then the client comes with a new requirement. So I go and reiterate. Similar if someone is doing the decoration for his house, let's say, it's a project. They go and come with a requirement, they commission a contractor, and then the contractor comes, and then there are change requirements and all. So this is an iterative model. The iterative model addresses deficiencies in the traditional waterfall model by incorporating concepts of concurrent work and the planned iteration. So concurrency is there. So for example, I can be collecting requirement and start the initial design for it. So that I give them, usually what happens is that it starts with a sketch. Someone wants, let's say, I want to renovate the reception area of a hospital. I started with that example. I can maybe collect the requirement. I provide an initial sketch, not the detailed design. I show it to the client, and then so while collecting the requirements and collecting more details, I can initially show the design. And as I collect more requirements, I will refine that design. So I will have a dynamic process of iterations. So it addresses the deficiencies in traditional waterfall model by incorporating concepts of concurrent work or a scheduled return to prior phases as new information is discovered. Most project models are iterative. Another model is the Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's the PDCA. It's a very, very famous model, and it's actually this term you will see, it's called an quality Deming cycle. We will cover that in the quality module. Is that we plan, we execute, we check. Variation, what do you mean variation? Tell me, Yusuf.
Variation of the concept along the way, discovered that client made a specific add-on of the design, or
So this is part of the iteration, and that's why, for example, you need a scope management plan, because the scope, if it changes, you need to see how it changes. You need to see what the limitation of the changes. If you work on projects, sometimes the client would come with a new variation and the size of it will be too big, and simply the contractor will tell him, I am sorry, this is not within my scope and I will not do it. So that's why they have a scope management plan to see. And even if there are changes, even contracts will require a certain methodology in which we incorporate changes. Yeah, Ahmed.
Excuse me, can you turn back to the iterative method? One slide earlier. Yeah. Excuse me, I didn't understand what mean by deployment. Deployment is deployment of the team maintenance?
As I always say, Ahmed, stop looking at facility management from a construction point of view. I told you that this is not related to construction. This is related to software deployment, okay? So this is not related to construction. I said that instead of this in construction, we might have a different phases. What you need to understand in this waterfall is that it starts with the process and goes down. So deployment in terms of software. So when I'm designing a software, I collect the requirements, I do the design, I make the deployment of the design, I do the testing again, and then I refine it. So there, for example, usually there are software, they will call it beta version. So when there's a new development, they call it a beta version. It means that they deploy it for wide testing, and then it goes for testing and deployment again, and then it runs into maintenance. This is not something related to construction.
Okay, another question about the variation. In the case of the variation, client asks for the variation, the contractor should claim for time and cost. Because iterative model is the client asks for variation, want to change something, want to change something. So at that case, the contractor can claim for extension of time and cost.
Okay.
So this will be actually it can be negative feedback for the client. If he wants, okay, I can. The contractor should
not necessarily. Sometimes, for example, there are contracts, and again, I'm telling you, stop looking at it from a point of construction. Stop looking at it from a point of the Qatar market. There are contracts, for example, in which if the client wants a variation, maybe there is certain regulations and rules for it. So, for example, they will say if it's a variation, that's why there is something called a scope management plan and a cost management plan. Sometimes variations within a certain amount are accepted, and sometimes variation within a certain amount, you can charge them on a time and manpower basis. So, yes, if you're talking about lump sum contracts, usually they will have a methodology for variation, and that methodology can include claims. Even claims, there is a procedure in proper contracts on how to handle claims, okay? And this is the claims management, for example, is part of the scope management and part of the cost management.
Thank you.
If you look at these things, I have already mentioned them: the scope management plan, the cost management plan. So when we talk about big projects, they are big items in themselves. As I mentioned, is that the first step is to just a minute. Okay, so now we are looking more and more into how project management applies to facility management. projects that we will be considered mainly are related to facility management. So if we look at this, the first phase is that when we said initiate the project, the number one thing is that we need to define the project. So the first phase is that define clearly what's the project. So if a management came and told us that I want to renovate the reception area, okay, what do you want in it? We want to understand is what are the requirements? What's the definition? The defined phase of the project model is the phase in which a project's purpose is defined and the project is approved and funded. So it can come from a simple requirement. Let's say the manager or the owner comes and says, I need you to do this for the reception area. So in the define phase, we go and define that this is going to be the framework. The budget for it, for example, is $500,000 riyal. And based on that, I have the project approved and funded. So in that, the defined project purpose, the purpose statement for a project is an indication of the project's reason for being done. And it specifies the project size, scope, schedule, budget, and quality at a high level. So at a high level, it means that we didn't still do the planning. So the initiating, this is called the initiating phase. It's even before the planning. So we are defining the general framework of the project, okay? The general framework, we define the project size, scope, schedule, budget, and quality, and all of this are at a high level. In the defined project criteria, we define the needs. Why are we needing this? We define the stakeholders and their aims or requirements. So the stakeholders are defined and identified. What is the stakeholder requirement? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the people who are requesting this? And we define the scope. We define the parameters, assumptions, risks, and constraints. So what does that mean? So there are certain assumptions, for example, and risks and constraints. A constraints can be is that the company doesn't want to, they put a budget of $500,000 riyal and they don't want to go above it. Plus another constraint will be put, for example, that they have to work with so-and-so contractor. Or another constraint will be is that they have to work with internal people, not to hire people from outside. So even if the time extends, they're trying to save costs, we will do it with our existing team. So all these assumptions, you're taking them before you start the planning, and they will be a basis of your plan. Document the project. So some assumptions or constraints, let's say, if I am replacing a chiller, then there'll be, for example, someone put a constraint, it should be within the same brand. I cannot, for example, if I have train chillers, I cannot go and install yours. So this is a constraint. Document the project purpose, test for feasibility, define and document the success criteria. So in the project initiating phase, or we define what means that what means do I consider to consider the project a success. So if I'm having the approval from MOI, the approval from MOI indicates the project has succeeded. Sometimes it's not clear cut. So for example, improving customer satisfaction. So how do I verify that? Yes, Firas, you had a question?
Yeah, Sabahat, what is the difference between the project purpose or the project objectives or project objects?
It's within the same thing.
The same thing.
Why the project is made. So they want you to understand why the project is made. What's the ultimate goal of the project, so that you don't go and not understand. So for example, if we are collecting requirements, we are understanding what's the intended for this. What's the intention? What's the ultimate intention? That's what we mean by it. Defining needs. The project can be defined as an organizational need, schedule to be addressed. For example, cost reductions or specific strategic goals. So we said that, let's say Amazon decided that they want to implement and utilize new technology in their warehousing and operations globally. So this is a strategic goal. And we roll out a project to be reflected in our facilities. The sources of these identified needs are usually inputs such as strategic plans. So the strategic plan, which is on top, which we mentioned earlier, will be an input for our planning, okay? Such as strategic plans. Specifications can be financial plans, feasibility studies. So the feasibility study can in itself be a project, and once it's completed, it will be an input for our project or the results of a project selection process. Define stakeholders and aims and requirements. Who are the project stakeholders? Project stakeholders are persons or organizations that have an interest in the project funding, resources, processes, or result. So I am upgrading a hotel, let's say. A stakeholder will be the hotel owner, will be the employees, will be the neighborhood, because maybe my project of renovation will require some noises and whatever, and I have to take them into consideration. Many projects have failed because they have failed to incorporate the stakeholders. So you hear of projects in different countries where they wanted to install a certain factory or something like that, and then the community, once it was completed, they went and didn't let it operate. They shut it down, and they had to shift it to somewhere else, the project. It has happened a lot previously. So that means that from the first thing, that the project management didn't incorporate the requirement of the stakeholders involved. So stakeholders are people who have an interest or who are directly or indirectly affected. The stakeholders, we have different definitions for them. We have direct stakeholders or primary stakeholder, and we have secondary stakeholders. So stakeholders can be very important, such as the owner of the building, or someone else. So define scope and intended use of deliverables. Scope is the extent of work or tasks to be done to produce a project deliverables, and can be defined as the end result of or deliverables themselves. So I am limiting the scope. The scope has to be defined. It cannot be open-ended. A very dangerous thing that happens in projects and leads to many project failure is something that we call scope creep. Scope creep is that the project starts at something, and then they continue adding, changing, adding, and changing, and then you end up with a project that's going for years and years and never completed. Define parameters. The parameters of the project encompass the assumption of the project sponsors and other stakeholders, risks that could endanger project success, and key constraints. So this is what we define, that every project will have a parameter in terms of budget, in terms of, as I said, you have to utilize this brand, you have to utilize this contractor, you have to do it in this time frame. And let's say we have an urgent mobilization into a certain country, and that the timelines cannot be extended. Some projects will have some tolerances, others don't. And you see that if you go into project planning, usually when we plan, we keep something for contingencies. Okay, so whether it's in time or in cost, we always have contingencies. So the project triangle is time, cost, and the quality. And of course, scope is in the middle of those things. So you can see how there's a balance always. If you want to rush the time of the project, okay, but and maintain the same quality, probably you will need to spend more cost to expedite. You need to hire more people, and you need to let them work overtime. Similarly, if you want to maintain, let's say, the cost, and maintain the time, you have to rush, and probably you will be compromising quality. Or let's say you are very adamant about the cost and the quality, and then you end up stretching the time. So you see, these things are always interrelated. and it's a balance of doing the management. Perform programming. Again and again, I say that programming is the process that defines the detailed project requirements. Programming equals collecting requirements of the end user that are needed to meet the project objectives and general project requirements. So programming is documented as a statement of requirement. So let's say that I was commissioned as a head of a multinational company, and I want to establish offices and a factory, or I wanted to establish a university in Qatar. Okay, I'm the head of facilities of a famous university, and so I go and do programming. Programming is collecting requirements. I collect the requirements from the stakeholders, how many courses you want to offer, you want the university to accommodate how many people, how many study halls you want, what kind of technology you want to utilize. You need special requirements. Maybe it should have accessibility, maybe it should have a library. So this is programming. So we are looking at the detailed project requirements. So on a high level, let's say there was a project initiated to establish an office in Qatar, and there's a budget put for it at $50 million. So you can see that in the initial stage, I will not go into the deep details of it. So I start the project initiated, and then during the planning, I start collecting the requirements. What do you want? I have the restriction of a $50 million, but I need to understand what do they want exactly. You want to have a very big outside area, you want to have a library, and so on. Okay, so once we collect the requirements, we develop what we call a statement of requirements. Project requirements program, or a program, is a document that provides the interface between the customer and the people who are responsible for transforming the space into a productive environment. Programs include space utilization and the criteria for support system. So we see here how the PMI terms are being translated in the case of facility management. And here we call the programming usually collecting the requirements, and we're limiting it to space requirements. So we will need, for example, let's say, again, I was commissioned to handle this. I want to know how many square meters you're talking about. I want to know what kind of building. If I'm establishing an office, I go and collect the requirement. Okay, you're going to set up an office in Qatar. You are Amazon. You want to set up offices in Qatar. What do you want in these offices? How many departments are you going to have? What requirements do you have? You want to have open spaces, or you want some specific work required, for example, specific needs? Do you want to have 10 meeting rooms? Do you want to have a training rooms? And so on. So in the case of facility management, usually it's about space programming. So space programming is that where we have a space, a rented facility, a bought facility, or whatever, and we are tailoring it into a specific requirement. Space programming determines user needs for the amount and configuration / features of physical space needed based on user role or business unit department needs. So we are determining the user needs for the amount and configuration. If you remember, we talked about that a facility manager should provide the right quantity of space and the right quality of space. And it has to be effective and efficient and meets the expression. We covered this earlier. So what do you mean the right quantity of space? Let's say the finance head tells you, okay, in Qatar, when you establish that office, I need an office that fits 20 people. And it's based on user role. Let's say the user role. So I can understand that if I have a finance manager, I need to allocate a separate office for him or her. Okay. Or the business unit department needs, let's say the finance, they need a separate meeting room for themselves. They need to have safes in place. They need to have a certain type of technology to be installed there because their CRM is linked to the head office, and so on. So we are configuring the space based on the needs or the user roles. Space standards. So to create space requirements, some companies utilize space standards. And space standards are developed to generalize how much space is needed for a given task, user role, or group function, such as standard sizes for executive offices. So you see, so that you can develop a space standard, like standard size for executive office. So if I have a CEO, it should have this much square meter. It should have this following amenities. It should have next to it a secretary for him or her, okay? And so on. If I have a department head, it should have this thing. If I have a computer programmer, it should have this space with this desk, with this type of desk. If I have a draftsman, it should have this thing. So I can create space standards to generalize how much space is needed for a given task, user role or group function, such as standard sizes for executive offices, cubicle space, conference space, etc. Facility space has its own terms and standards when measuring area to allocate space, corridors or individual spaces. So these are terminology which are relevant to space, which as a facility manager you should be familiar with. Those of you who are facility managers already, they are or should be aware of some of them or many of them. So gross area is the sum of the floor areas on all levels of the building that are totally enclosed within the building envelope. If you remember the building envelope, they are measured to the outside face of exterior walls. So if I have a building and this is the building walls and we have cladding outside, okay, and the cladding is what we called last time as the building envelope, if you remember, the building envelope. So the gross area is the sum of all the floors. We have 3 floors, let's say, so we take 3 times the length here from outside to outside, okay, and the width from outside to outside. So this is what we call the gross area. So we have a gross. So when someone says that we're going to rent an office or a building which has 1,000 square meters, you ask what kind of this? You ask them, is this a gross area, or this is a rentable area, or this is a usable area? We will see the other definitions. So the rentable area is the gross area minus the exterior walls. So we're talking about now this area. We are removing the exterior walls in that area. You see how it can shrink. Major vertical penetrations. What are vertical penetrations? Let's say there is in the middle a shaft for an elevator, let's say, and parking spaces. In leased space, this area includes shared spaces with other tenants. So rentable area is the gross area minus exterior walls minus the vertical wall penetrations minus the interior parking space. The usable area is the portion of a building or floor available for occupants. So here we're talking about the general. Now we're talking about the, usually you rent the area, and the rentable area includes the shared spaces with other tenants. So the shared spaces, we will see those, the primary circulation and whatever. But this is not the usable area. The actual usable area is the portion of a building or floor available for occupants. And leased space, this is area not shared with other tenants. So this is the area for us. So let's say we have a common canteen, we are paying for its rent, okay, in the rentable area, but it's not a usable area specifically by us. So the usable area is the rentable area minus building core and service area minus the primary circulation. If we go to the core and service area, the core and service area is with the area with the common access or benefit to all users within a gross space. Example, the public corridors, the restrooms, the mechanical or utility units, and vestibules. It's also called common area, common support area, or core area. If you are into facilities, you understand what's the core area. So usually, let's say you are having a building, and sometimes you tell the tenants, okay, we are in charge of maintenance of the common areas. You have let's say, what you call a residential building. The core and service area is the common areas, like the building corridors, the building pump rooms, the mechanical rooms, and all of this. Primary circulation is the portion of a building that is a public corridor or a lobby is required for access by all occupants on a floor to stairs, elevators, restroom, or building entrances. So the primary circulation is the part which is for access by all occupants on a floor to stairs, elevators, building entrance. These items and definitions, you need to understand them, and you need to be very well aware of them. Needs assessments are used to solicit inputs from multiple stakeholders to discover and document previously unstated needs. It is through a needs assessment that an organization finds out what a customer really wants. So the programming and collection requirements. Yes, Firas.
Excuse me, Mr. Bahar, but what's the point behind segregating the spaces as you describe it for us?
Yeah, usually it is usually when you're signing contracts for lease, you need to understand what's the gross area, and this is set usually by another organization, which is called the BOMA, Building Owners Management Association. And so they tell you, and this is for like a common reference. It's a common knowledge between the tenant and the retailer, let's say, and the landlord. When we're talking about the gross area, what are we talking about? When we're talking about the rentable area, what we're talking about? When we're talking about the leased area, even it's used to define the scope. Because sometimes you as a facility manager, for example, certain contracts is that I will be from the client side only in charge of the primary circulation and core and service area, and anything that's inside that area is your scope in terms of maintenance. So this is just a terminology to make to reach common grounds. Sheikh?
Yeah, the gross area, is it the build-up area?
Yes.
I come across that term, build-up area.
Yes.
Same.
Yes.
And about footprint area, does it include the external parking area also, the footprint, or only the building? Like in a project, we have the main building, and we have like some small ancillary building or pump room outside the building, and a parking external parking shades area. So the footprint area includes all, or what?
Yes, you're talking about the gross area of a specific building. You're talking about the area. When you're talking about the gross area, I am not interested in the other definitions. When I'm talking the gross area, is it very clear that the sum of all floors that are totally enclosed within the building envelope? So what's the building envelope? If it's a separate building, it's not the same envelope.
Yeah.
Okay. So the needs assessment. So the programming, if you remember, collecting requirement, in FM we call it the needs assessment. So the needs assessment are used to solicit input from multiple stakeholders to discover and document previously unstated needs. So part of our proper planning is that to understand what exactly they want. So needs assessment take the form of observation, interview, or survey. So the needs assessment is the same as programming. This is an example of a needs assessment worksheet. So we're telling, for example, let's say we want to select an office. Okay, this is a sample which I got online. So we go and tell them, where do you prefer the location? Let's say you want to move into Doha, into Qatar. Where do you prefer the location? Let's say they write Doha. Area amenities. Inside that area, what do you need? You need, for example, a metro. You need to have a close by park. Key employee commute times for us to understand if there is traffic or not. Public transportation requirements. Proximity to clients and partners. Or let's say it will be different if another company comes and wants to service the oil and gas industry. They will tell you, no, I need an office inside Ras Laffan or inside Al Khor, let's say. The building itself, what parking does it have? What building hours you need it? You need HVAC, how floor size, elevators, security. What kind of security? So let's say I'm selecting the building for an embassy. The requirements will be totally different if I'm selecting it for a residential office. Probably I need a separate building for an office, for a embassy. I cannot make it inside a tower, for example, because the security requirements are different. Power, do I need redundant power, and so on and so on and so on. So we are collecting the details of everything. The number of conference rooms. Do you want it to have a mail room? Do you want it to have a server room? Do you want it to have labs? Do you want to have how many restrooms? Do you want it to have showers? And so on. So we are collecting the requirements into the details. When we talked about project initiating, okay, we talked about that. I told you that the sponsor of the project comes and initiates the project. So this project, for it to start, we have something that we call a project charter. A project charter is a document used to justify and allow formal authorization of a project. So a project is considered started when we have the project charter signed. So it's an authorization of a project and release funds. So when we sign the project charter, we are committing to funds. So someone came and told us we need to renovate a building, and there's a 3 million riyal allocated for that. This we will put in a project charter. In a project charter, we identify the project, we describe it, we define the project manager in the project charter. The project manager is selected in the project charter, and the project sponsor is named there, and the signature. And here on a very high level, we mention the risk and constraints, the scope constraints, the milestones, the time requirement on a very high level. This gets detailed, the project charter gets detailed during execution and the planning, I mean. Project objective statement is a document used to state what the project will accomplish in terms of its scope and deliverables. So a project charter is a document to justify and allow formal authorization and name persons responsible for the project, including the project manager. The success criteria of the project is usually also identified in the project charter. Scope and deliverables documentation. The document includes a primary scope that estimates, so scope and deliverables documentation, okay? The document includes a preliminary scope estimate that includes, so here we're talking about scope. We started with the scope. Budget. So we are talking now, if you go into this, we're talking into the details of each and every one of this. So we talked about the project initiating, then we talk about scope, cost, HR, and so on. Again, it goes on these topics in a, how do I say, in a tailored, diluted way that is suitable for FM needs. Project charter is a document used to justify and allow, a scope and deliverables documentation. So in this, we document the primary scope estimate that includes estimate acceptance criteria, broad scope controls and limits. The elements of scope documentation are high level or general in nature, but the tasks are described. Ya Nwaribe. Guys, please don't mute if you are not having anything to say. So, okay, please mute yourself and you can raise your hand. Let me just complete this idea. So, when we talk about the elements of scope documentation are high level or general in nature, but the tasks are prescribed in enough detail to allow development of a work breakdown structure or a task list. So usually the scope is high, okay, but then we will see how it gets down into a work breakdown structure. The WBS is something that we need to identify as we move ahead. Tell me, Ammar.
About determining the project scope.
Huh?
About determining the project scope.
Yeah.
Who's usually determine the project scope?
Sponsor.
Yani you mean the client? The client.
Yes. So the client, if he's an external client, but if let's say that you're a manager and you're now managing a palace and or you're managing a hospital, and then internally the IT department has a project requirement, let's say the sponsor of it, they want you to build a separate server room for them. So they are the project sponsor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So elements include executive overview. The executive overview is a high-level overview of the purpose of the project and describes its deliverables. So the project scope elements include executive overview. The executive overview is a high-level overview of the purpose of the project and describes its deliverables. It defines the project in terms of what it should achieve and its limits. Statement of requirements may be included in the scope documentation. Limits, we have covered all of those. So the limits are elaborated to guide later planning and reduces chances of miscommunication. So the limits, we include the assumptions and limitations on the project itself. Project deliverables are listed and characterized. Initial work breakdown structure or task list. So we start with a general scope. Let's say the retrofitting of an office building into a service office or into a residential unit. So we will define the general idea, and then for us to do the particular tasks, for example, the civil construction, for example, fixing the IT equipment and so on. Each those are part of the work breakdown structure. Okay, so the initial work breakdown structure may be included in the scope deliverables, but it will be elaborated as we move along. Schedule documentation. So when we talked about the managed project schedule, we include the hard delivery dates. So let's say that, and milestones. So there are milestones sometimes defined. Okay, I want this to be finished by the end of June next year, but I want the phase 1 of the project to be finished by end of December this year. So June is the delivery date and December is the project first milestone. Time constraints are included and approvals needed per milestone. So let's say that the initial phase that you will do, let's say, renovation of a building of 10 apartments, okay? And then the time frame would be for next year, but the first apartment, you should do it as a sample within 1 month, and approvals needed by milestone. And unless you get the approval of the sponsor, you cannot go and continue the rest. So this is determined in the schedule documentation. The budget documentation, it includes the initial cost estimates broken down into major categories or line items, initial staffing costs, conceptual budget, and contingencies. So what's a contingency? Is the money that you keep aside for emergencies or for variations from initial scope. Quality documentation. So we can see how, again, look, I like always to take you to this project management body of knowledge. It is covering the scope, cost, the HR, or whatever, at least the important ones of those, the quality. So each one of those is taken care of. So we reach the project quality requirements. Quality documentation expects the level of effort, inherent characteristics of deliverables and assumptions, risk and constraints. It includes the grade of deliverables, the initial risks, the assumptions, the customer impact, and the constraints. Plan. So, as we said, the project has the 5 phases: initiate, plan, execute, monitor and control, and close. The 5 phases. In the initiation phase, we talked about the project charter, getting the budget approved. We were talking about the high-level estimation for cost, the high-level estimation for budget, the high-level estimation for scope, the high-level estimation for quality. When we're talking about the plan, we go and elaborate it. In terms of facility management, okay, we look at the designing of deliverables or space. Let us take a few minutes break. So it's 8:20 now. Let's come back at 8:25, please, okay? Yeah. So I'm back to continue. Okay. So we closed the initiating phase. Now we're talking about the planning phase. So again, we related to the facility management. So when we talk about planning, designing engineering deliverables or space is necessary when project development of complex engineered deliverables or capital constructions. So again, as we said, is that usually if we have a big project, then we need to adopt more detailed planning. If it's a smaller project, we don't need to create a separate scope management plan, time management plan, quality management plan, and so on. So many FM projects require no design work and can omit this step. So when we talk about the design deliverables, maybe we don't need that. Proceeding directly to the development of the project management plan. The planning, it includes by acquiring space. So let's say after we collected what kind of office we need in Qatar, then we go and select the building. We select an office in West Bay. And then we create, to reach that decision, we created the site selection criteria. We did the site search, we did the building evaluation, and then we either purchase or lease the space. And after that, usually we contract with a design firm or doing internally. And then we do the design process. So we conduct the programming. So the programming is that we collect the requirements of the departments involved in this. And we saw some tools which are used, let's say the defining general requirements based on the roles. And then we generate the schematic design. So schematic design is a rough design. And then we do a design development, and then we generate the final design and constructing contract drawings. So we'll see how we start with the schematic design and we move ahead of it. The project management plan is the primary planning document for the project. It identifies the scope. It includes the schedule, all these elements which I mentioned earlier. So the project management plan should include all of these. Okay, the detail of elaboration is determined by the size of the project. It's different if I'm having a project of moving 200 people and designing the space for them versus, let's say I'm designing the office spaces for QP, let's say. 4,000, 5,000 employees. So it should include the schedule, cost, budget, quality, communications, risk, specifications, procurement, and change management plan. This plan is developed from the project charter. So we saw in the initiating phase, we have the project charter and the project objective statement and the final design and construction documents. What is the work breakdown structure? This came earlier. So the work breakdown structure or task list is a method of dividing the project deliverables and work into manageable or logical subdivisions. So if let's say I want to do the renovation of a restaurant, okay, there are, for example, certain things such as the civil works, such as the MEP works. If I'm renovating it, I need to change the MEP works. So maybe this is a different package. Or let's say I want to add a water fountain. So this is a different package, and so on. So the work breakdown structure, as we said, is a method of dividing the work deliverables and into manageable or logical subdivisions. So that why we do that? So that the scope can be defined and the required work can be understood and assigned. A work breakdown structure or a task list is a hierarchy that branches out from the general to the specific and can be presented as an indented list in a practical format. So here the project, this is an example. We can see is that the pre and post cleanup, I'm renovating a yard, let's say, I'm cutting the lawn, I'm trimming, and I'm doing equipment preparation. As I said, let's say for a restaurant, I can be doing the civil works change. I can do the furniture as a separate item. I can do the MEP as a separate item, and so on. And when I divide it like that, why I do that? So the scope can be defined. I'm defining the scope of MEP. So I'm defining the smaller scope, and it will form part of the bigger scope. So in the work breakdown structure is that a task is a function to be performed that always consumes time and may consume resources. In contract proposals, a task is a unit of work that's such. So what's the definition of task? A task is a unit of work that's sufficiently well defined so that readiness criteria, completion criteria, cost and schedule can be all determined. A schedule can be also called an activity. A subtask is a division of a task into units that are cohesive and relatively independent from each other. A work package, okay, is a deliverable or component of work that can be cost estimated, scheduled, and measured. So the task, let's say the task is the civil work. We defined it in the renovation of a restaurant. The task, let's call it the MEP works. So this is a task. And there are subtasks, and then there are under the MEP work packages. So work packages are deliverables that can be estimated now, scheduled, and measured. So we can estimate them into details. It is a division of a subtask into the smallest unit of work defined in the work breakdown structure. So the smallest unit of work defined in the WBS is a work package. A work package is assigned to an individual and contains enough detail to allow for work execution. So the process of going from a big thing into a smaller thing is what we call the decomposition of the project scope. The decomposition. So subdivide the deliverables into work breakdown structure to work package level, where we are able to estimate the cost and time. This is the summation of all what I have said earlier. So we are dividing tasks into subtasks, subtasks into work packages, and we iterate and validate. So it's a project management is more about iterative phases. So project scheduling is a tool to organize tasks after we have identified the tasks. Now we are able to create the project schedule. The project schedule is a tool to organize the tasks. Will be the work packages, for example, will be the, let's say, painting. This is a work package. This is under the civil works, which is under the bigger picture of the renovation. So we started from the big scope and all the level up to the level of detail can be determined by us up to what level we want to do detailing. It depends on the size of the project. So let's say if I'm doing the project of a 40-story building, the painting activity in itself is large enough and needs to be divided, let's say, maybe into floors, maybe into areas, maybe into sections. The scheduling processes is a tool to organize into sequence with a start and end dates for each task and assign responsibilities and resources. So it involves two things: determining the start and end date, and we're assigning the responsibilities and resources. The schedule process involves determining resource availability and lead time. So let's say the procurement of a chiller. Okay. Let's say my project is installation of a new building, and then the chiller, let's say it needs a lead time of 3 months. So if I want to consider these items, I need to start procuring at a certain date. So for example, the task of finishing procurement, let's say I want to hand over, I want to finish, I want the chiller to be on site on June 1st, okay? On June 1st. So I have to go 3 months back and make sure that my procurement process, and let's say my procurement process for me to solicit input and to get quotations and finalize, it's 1 month. So I need to start 4 months before this task in order to have it on June. So this is part of the scheduling process, is that we determine the resource availability and lead time. We sequence the tasks. So for example, I cannot install the chiller before I have it delivered. So the sequence of delivering this is followed by the installation. It is, so if there's a delay in this process of procurement, there'll be a delay in the delivery of the item, there'll be delay in the start of my installation. So this is where the schedule goes and gets off track. We sequence the task, we estimate the resources, we estimate the duration, and we build the complete project schedule. So if you look at it in general, we determine the plan project, we determine the activities, we determine the resources, we determine the activity durations. So the procurement, let's say, needs 1 week, 2 weeks. Determine dependencies. As we said, the installation depends on installer. This and analyzing, we analyze and to see what needs to be done before what, and how can we do it in the most efficient way. So when you're talking about a huge project, the project can be very complex and scheduling. That's why you have planning engineers. So the planning engineers, and sometimes you have a full planning department on bigger projects, because you're having scheduling which is to be performed by Primavera. And no, not necessary. You can do it. It's not, yeah, but it's typically done by Primavera here, but there are many other software to do it. And the Primavera or other software, let's say Office projects or others, you determine the sequences and it can help you create the schedule, but it's created by a planning team. A tool for planning is what we call Gantt charts. Gantt chart shows a timeline that graphically illustrates the duration of the task using bars. Milestones on the timeline are usually indicated with a diamond shape. Gantt charts also include informations on dependencies and predecessors. So I included here, for example, a sample of a simple construction schedule. We saw how like design and planning. So they are defined into 3 different phases: the pre-construction, the construction, and the closeout. Okay, and we saw that like the design and the planning, there's a sample approval and there's a milestone. When the design is completed, there's a milestone, and this milestone is defined by a diamond. And let's say here we can identify it should be approved by the client before we move into the construction phase. When we move into the construction phase, there'll be a mobilization, demo, rough framing, and let's say here there's an inspection for the framing. So this is another milestone. And then we have the MEP rough in, another inspection. Then we start the finishing activities, the fit out, the drywall, painting, trimming, and substantial completion. And then we go into the last phase, into the punch list and the final inspection and the closeout documents. So here you determine the duration. So for example, let's say we have a duration. So you see the date. It has a start date, it has an end date. And even here, it will have resources allocated to it, like the people and so on. Critical path method. So when you see in a complex, this is a simple project, but in a bigger project, it can be a much complex processes with lots of interdependencies. So you can have this as and link to another process, procurement process of the drywall, and so on. So a critical path method is a way to determine the project duration. After we included this, we determine the project duration. The critical path method, we need to know, usually in projects, we will have, let's say here, activity A, after which is activity B, after which is activity C, and activity D. So there are several processes running in parallel. Okay. The critical path is that the path which is if there's a change in the path, you will have to push the whole project. There is no tolerance on. So in this case, the critical path is those in the red line. What does that mean? So here, for example, here, if we go and have a little bit delay in activity C, we have some leeway of 10 days, okay, in this case. So if I'm delaying activity C by 10 days, there will be no impact on the general thing, because here the zero is here, there is zero. So activity E, if here we finish on time, but this activity gets delayed by 10 days, I still have 10 days in that area. So the critical path is determining the items which are going to be affected the path that's going to be affected if there's a change in it. So using the WBS task list, arrange tasks showing precedences and record the duration. So we do it using something we call forward pass scheduling. Okay, and then we do a backward pass scheduling. I don't need to go into the technical details in it, and you really don't need to know it, okay? But you need to understand is that if there is a change on the critical path, the whole project will be pushed. Cost estimates. Cost estimates are the foundation of the project budget for cost control during execution. Methods and tools. There are different ways for us to do cost analysis. Those of you who have handled some estimations will understand or might be familiar with some of those things. So historical costs. Historical cost is that simply, let's say someone says, come and I need the replacement of this chiller. Okay. And we have a historical cost. They are adapted from simple prior projects. They are economical together, but require expert judgments. So they require inflation or geographic unit cost adjustments. So let's say we installed a similar unit on our building in Ras Laffan 2 years ago, and it cost us 2 million riyal. So this year I expect certain changes. Consider 10% increase. It will cost us roughly 2.2. So this is the historical. It usually is rough, but it's easy to get, and you adjust. You need expert judgment to adjust for inflation or the geographic unit cost. So for example, you understand that, okay, we installed it in Ras Laffan, the safety requirements were high, the client was demanding. So here I can do it instead of 2 million, probably the manpower cost is going to be going down, and we can do it in 1.8 million. We have something else which is called bottom-up estimates. Bottom-up estimates is we go and we defined at that time in the work breakdown structure, we defined it up to the certain level. So let's say the painting. So remember the example I gave for the restaurant. I defined the package as the painting. So I estimate the MEP package. I estimate the civil package. I estimate the painting, and I wrap all of them and go up. And this is a more accurate way, okay? Because we are going on to the retail level and going up. Top-down estimates. So this is similarly when you set a hard budget. So you go and you say, I want to renovate this, but I only have a $500,000 budget. So this is like a hard budget, and then you have to manage internally. How you do it and whatever, it should not exceed that figure. Parametric modeling is that the cost per hour, square meter or foot. This rate is, so let's say that we have experience parametric. Usually this is like the rough scales, and we can do it even for MEP works or for civil construction works or for fit out works. So for example, just throwing a figure, let's say we know that the cost, let's say for per fit out for an office space, let's say is 500 riyal per square meter. This is a rough cost. So I have a 100 meter office. So 100 into 500, this is 50,000 riyal. So this is called parametric modeling. Another way is to do evaluation of competitive bids. So let's say I want to do a fit out of the office. I have a rough idea. I call 3-4 companies, and then they come and provide me with a cost estimate. Yes, Firas.
Which is the most effective and practical tool in FM out of all this 5 methods?
Depending on what the accuracy level that is required. So let's say someone comes and tell you, give me the budgetary price for the placement of a chiller. And you know that it depends on the situation for us. Because it depends on how fast you want it, how detailed. So let's say, no, the financial team wants exactly how much it's done. Then maybe I will go and make a tender for it, and it will take me 2-3 weeks for me to invite the people to come and survey them and whatever. Or initially it can elaborate. So initially I tell them it's gonna cost you around 2 million riyal. Then they go and ask the owner, and he says it's okay, but give me a more detailed thing. Then we go and solicit, and we get an exact figure. And then during the time the project is awarded, then we go and do a very detailed bottom-up estimation. So we can use all of these tools depending on the requirements and where are you in the process. Yeah, Sheikh.
I did not catch a hard budget. Can you please explain hard budget?
You want to make decoration for your house, and you give your wife 20,000 riyal, and you tell her that this is your budget. So
Okay.
rather than she goes and looks around and comes this, so you set the budget. You set a hard budget on the top, and you tell the project manager, you do it within that.
Okay. You mean the top priorities budget in this case?
Yes. So it's not like the other way around, that they go around and check how much for this room, how much for this, how much for this, and then they come back. You just set it on the top.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. So here you do it, or you do it on a higher level, on the task level. Remember that we are talking about the work package. You cannot define the work package, how much it will take. So the task level, so you define it. So it's a more rough, higher level thing. Budget, cost estimates. What's the budget? This is an important thing, is that the budget of a project is the cost estimate plus contingency reserves. So I did a cost estimate of 500,000 riyal, and I kept a contingency of, let's say, 50,000. Okay, I keep that contingency, and then we aggregated into a budget, and which is a baseline document for use later. So usually we determine a baseline for the budget and a baseline for the time, for the schedule. So this is the baseline. If there is a variation on that, this is where we go and review our plan, and maybe we have to compress our schedule and do some other ways to handle this. Budgeting tools and methods may include the following: reconciliation with funding priorities, project costing plan, cost management plan, budget change control processes, contingency reserve analysis. So the budgeting methods can include this project costing plan, a cost management plan. How will I manage costs? How will I review the costs? Budget control, let's say change. So there's an increase in the budget requirement. How do I handle this? Do I ask for more funds? Do I ask for a variation? What do I do? Contingency reserve analysis, as I said, in this 500,000, I kept a 50,000 because see, this I didn't say earlier, but this one. Not this one. So there is another quote which says, no war was won without a plan, and yet no war was won according to plan. And this is what happens in project management. So you estimate that it's not a hard science. You estimate that the cost for civil works is going to be 50,000 riyal. And then during execution, you added some item and whatever, and you ended up at 60,000 riyal. So it's not exact. So maybe you used your reserves to take it. So a tool which we use is that the contingency reserve analysis. So, and then you go for electrical work, for example, you estimated it at 20,000 riyal, whereas actually you were able to do it at 15. You found some cables, some tools you had in the store, so your cost is reduced. So that is part of the cost management plan. Quality management plan has two goals: to create a plan to meet the overall scope of the project in terms of quality, and to establish and maintain quality standards. Quality management methods may include a cost-benefit analysis, international quality standards, total quality management, benchmarking, and cost of quality. So when we are considering the quality, we can utilize a cost-benefit analysis. So this is like comparing the options. When we are purchasing something, we looked at this life cycle cost analysis. We looked into other, sometimes it might not be a non-tangible benefit. So it can be a more expensive item. So let's say when I want to decide the power on a certain thing, I say that, okay, let us utilize solar panels. It's going to cost us more, but it will be something that I can benefit from marketing. So this is like a cost-benefit analysis. Another tool is the international quality standards. There are different quality standards for different things. So I can say that I need the HVAC equipment to be complying by so and so code of ASHRAE. So I am securing compliance to a certain standard. Total quality management is the comprehensive quality management. Benchmarking is when I compare to other facilities, let's say. So I have, let's say, I want to do a renovation of my building, and then my competitor is utilizing this kind of equipment, is utilizing this. So I do a benchmarking. Where do I stand? The cost of quality, again, what's the cost of quality that I am adopting? Meeting the first goal requires understanding the difference between quality and grade. Anyone here understands the difference between quality and grade? Do you have any idea? Huh? No one? What's it?
No.
No? Tell me.
The quality happens to be a higher grade, but the grade itself is of certain level that it cannot succeed to the higher quality.
Not necessary. This is where the mixture happens. So let me explain it. So when you decide, the grade is the level of the requirement that you have. So you can, let's say, when I'm deciding for the flooring, okay, I can decide for marble floor, or I can decide for a ceramic floor. Which is of higher grade? The marble floor is a higher grade than a ceramic floor, right? But the quality, let's say, even if I decide for a ceramic, okay, the quality of that ceramic should be also higher quality. You understand the difference between a grade and a quality. So I can decide for the doors, for example, to be solid wood doors versus plywood doors. So the solid wood door is a higher grade than the plywood door. But when I go and buy that plywood door, Quality is making sure that what I want is there. So I can request higher or lower grade, but it should always be of good quality.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So this is the difference between quality or grade. Communication management. So when we're talking about big projects, you really need to have a communication management plan. What's a communication management plan? Is that how the information should flow? How is it regulated? And you see, like for example, the construction of Doha Airport, it's a huge thing. So maybe there are changes. You need to communicate it to different contractors, to different subcontractors. And let's say that communication usually will be part of contract for variation requests, for time changes. There is a specific format for which you do that. Why you do this? To ensure the compliance and ensure that there are no, how do I say, miscommunications, and that there's a proper channel for passing information. So the purpose of communication management is to inform each stakeholder that they receive that neither too much nor too little project information. So let's say, for example, you're doing the upgrade of the car park shade system. Okay, when you are communicating to one stakeholder, which is the tenants of that building, okay, you really don't need to inform them about the details of the things. You tell them, for example, the key milestones. That on so and so date, we're going to start. On so and so date, we're going to finish. On so and so date, we will be blocking the parking. On so and so date, we will do this. We'll be doing working at the morning. You need to tell them, for example, for them, they don't really need to know on so and so date, we will bring the civil contractor, and on so and so date, we will do the painting. So understand who needs what and give them what information at the right time. So information at the right time, so it can be useful for decision making. So let's say if there's a budget variation, you need to go and inform the project sponsor. You cannot, after you have exceeded the budget by 50%, you go and tell them. It will not be a good decision taken then. Either one way or two-way communication. So a one-way communication is, let's say, when you are informing the tenants of the changes that you are making. A two-way communication is that when you send to a contractor that you request them to add this item and you request feedback, you request that they are complying with this. Communication in an appropriate media format and level of formality. So when you are informing your client, your tenants, you put a bulletin board, you send them a WhatsApp, you do a different than how you address your contractor. Your contractor, maybe you write them a formal letter. Methods and tools for developing communication management may include the following: online project management software and meetings. Risk management. So the risk is the potential for the realization of unwanted.
Can you come back again?
Yeah, please, Abdurrahman.
One slide.
Okay, don't open the mic, please. Okay, go ahead.
Can you give example for online project management software? Some example for the software used for the online project management.
Yeah, Zoho, for example.
Can you write it, Sabah?
Just Google it. There is one which I know of, which is called Zoho. Z-O-H-O.
Z-O-H-O. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
There are many tools now which are web-based online, suitable for search utilization, customer relationship management, project management. Yes, there is Zoho, and there are, I think, other modules. I think Primavera also has a module online now. So there are many. I think even the project management of Microsoft, you can use it online. And there are many free tools now, and the concept of software as a service, SaaS, where you don't buy for the package, but you pay a monthly subscription. So risk management is that the potential for realization of unwanted negative consequences of an event. Methods and tools. Risk management methods and tools may include the following basic strategies. We defined this earlier. the risk we can avoid, accept, transfer, or mitigate. So avoid is that when we change the process in order not to go through that thing, so we avoid it. So let's say that there's a risk if we delay, if we utilize this, these items are difficult to find in Qatar, this material for soundproofing of the walls. So I avoid it. I go and say, okay, let's go without the soundproofing. So I'm avoiding. I'm accepting. So this is a risk which is acceptable. Yeah, okay, I may not able to find it, but I have a confirmation from a supplier, so the risk is less. I'm accepting it. Okay, if I can live with it, the worst comes to worst, I will not install installations. Transfer, usually a very common thing of transferring risk is insurance, where the risk is held by someone else for us to pay a fee. Mitigation is we reduce the impact of it. So in case it happens, we do something else to mitigate the impact of the risk. Plan, team, and resources. So we're talking about the resource management plan. So you see that during the plan, we have covered all of this now. Let me go again. So we're talking about the scope management plan. And this includes the work breakdowns. Then we included the schedule management plan. Then we included the cost management plan. And then we included the quality management plan. We included the communications management plan. There is a risk management plan. And now we're talking about the resources management plan. So the resources management plan is that when we will use and who we will use. And this happens on projects. So for example, the testing and commissioning engineer, for example, I really don't need to hire them from the start of the project. These people who will come later. The MEP team, I don't need to bring them from the beginning. So I need first maybe to complete the civil works, depending what kind of thing. So I need to know when to bring and at what time. So planning the team and resources addresses organization and work assignment planning for internal staff and contracted resources. Methods and tools for developing a project team and contractor specification might include the following: the project organizational charts, position description, project management office, allocation of resources. So the organizational chart of the project is a tool that I can use, and usually this is a standard for a project to have an organization chart for us to know who's who. The position description, okay, what's the job description of a project management? What's the job description of a construction manager? The project management office, some organizations have a project management office. A project management office is an entity which manages all the projects and which ensures the coordinations between the different projects. So let's say I can share the resources. I'm having 3-4 projects. I can share. They will have an available civil team, let's say on December. Allocation of resources. Another tool is what we call a RASI chart. So what's a RASI? Is that responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. When we are deciding is that, so this is like a project RASI chart to know who's who and who's in charge of what. You look here, Ellen, Carl, Babette, and Thomas. You see that Ellen is accountable. So accountable, it means that if there is something wrong, she holds accountability. If you see Ellen is accountable for all activities of the project. Okay. Carl is, for example, when negotiation with the customer, he is consulted, but the activity responsible should be handled by Thomas. In the project planning, Carl is in charge for planning. He will consult with Babette, and in the end, Alan is accountable. So this is what we call a RASI chart. Procurement management plan. Okay, the procurement management plan is the element of the project management plan related to statement of works for purchasing material or professional services. Types of procurement contracts include There are different procurement contracts. The procurement contracts include fixed price contracts, or what we call as lump sum contracts, okay? Cost reimbursement contracts, or what we call them cost plus contracts. So you take the project and I will pay you. It can, for example, be a fixed fee. You construct for me the warehouse, which I need as an additional unit. And then I will pay you the material cost that you take and the manpower cost plus a 5% fee. Or I can pay you, for example, $500,000 riyal as a fee. Time and material. So time and material, like I can identify that the manpower cost for a carpenter, you're gonna charge me at 20 riyal. The manpower cost for a project engineer, 50 riyal. The material, you're gonna charge me for this much per square meter for a wooden flooring, and so on. There are other contract vehicles as well. So the lump sum contract here, cost plus contract, time and material, or unit pricing contracts. So unit pricing contracts is not like, are you gonna charge me for the installation of tiles this much per square meter? Bonds, it's not James Bond. A bond is a certificate that promises to pay a holder a specified amount of money at some future date. I think this question came in the business module, but there are different types of bonds. So a bond is a promise for payment. We have a bid bond, tender bond, performance bond, and a payment bond. So, or guarantee. So a bond is a form of guarantee. So a bid bond is a bid bond guarantee. So we are saying that you provide usually a bid bond guarantee with your bid submittal, and usually this is done to ensure that you're going to be executing the contract and not doing it just to waste our time. A performance bond is done, committed by a contractor to ensure that they perform on time. And a payment bond is that, let's say, for example, you pay an advance payment and I want to make sure that you don't run away with it, then you provide me with a payment bond. Manage and oversee the project. So we've covered, if you go through this again, I always like to go through the logical thing for you to see it. So we said that there is an initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So the initiating is the first thing, where we identify what's the project at a high level. Planning is where we create the detailed plans of the scope management plan, the time management plan, the communication plan, the procurement plan, and then we finish. So initiating, planning. Now we are looking into execution. So after we created the plan, we are going into execution. And by the way, the Project Management Institute focuses on creating better detailed plans before executing. Yes, Muru High Tech Services, you're not putting your real name.
Yeah, it's myself, Tiago. Actually, it's a Gmail name. It's okay. So the bond, we are discussing about bond, right? Is it only related with the procurement and purchasing of the items, or it is related to overall, so the bond? Can you explain about us again the bond only?
It can conclude in procurement execution. Usually this is like project execution. You prefer a bond. You're not, have you heard of a performance bond?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, so what's the question?
No, my question is that this is for only for procurement model, or this kind of bond has been using for in another any of the relative projects in any other models.
So procurement here in this case means for contracting also.
Yeah.
This is your question. You want to understand if it applies to contracting as well?
No, sir. We are discussing about types of bonds here, right? This bond only for the procurement model, or else this bond will be applicable for any another concerns also for procuring something for the companies.
I'm not getting you. You are asking me if.
Yeah, I will come back to you, sir. Once I will go through and then I will come back to you.
No. Tell me so the procurement. So the bond is usually done as a tool to regulate procurement or to regulate contracting and subcontracting.
Yeah, that's what I would like to ask. Only this is for the procurement for buying some of the items only, or else it will support this kind of bonds in another, like any of the before plans we have discussed.
So let's say, for example, you want
I
to.
will come back to you, sir. I will come back to you because I got an confusion.
Okay. So usually.
I will come back to you.
Okay. So the bonds are tools which are utilized for subcontracting or for material procurement. Acquiring. So here we go into the managing and overseeing the project. We are talking about the execution part. So it says that the project manager acquire the team and resources. So when we start executing, we start by acquiring the team. We have prepared the plan, and now we are about to execute it. To execute it is that we need to acquire the team and resources. What does that mean? We need to have the right people. We need to have the contractors, which, let's say, even if we are subcontracting it, we need to have the resources, we need to have the money. So the management committed for $500,000 real. I need to start seeing money with me. By selecting members from their own FM organization. So projects, as we said, can be done internally from the FM organization, or they can come from other parts of the business. So if we, for example, have an construction sector, then we can do that. Or let's say we have a technology team in the head office. Maybe I talk to the IT manager and he gives me some resources. So, or we can go and solicit and accepting tenders and bids, or directly negotiating contracts as appropriate. Inputs that we utilize to acquire the team and resources may include the project team staff and contract specifications, the procurement management, the contract details, and the constraints, including availability and lead time. So after I talk to them, and then they tell me, look, I only have these people available in July. They are executing a project, and so that you need to take it into your scheduling and planning. If you look at this, so here we looked at the product. We talked about the plan, do, check, act model. So define, is this the initiating phase where we define and the plan, and now we are in the doing. Okay, and the doing is that we are having, let's say, the contract details, the procurement management, the constraints, and then the processes which are utilizing it, evaluate internal staff, request responses, and then we with the output will be signed contracts, kick-off meetings, and we initiate. So we start the process and we go into execution. Bidding documents, the following. So we can acquire resources by bidding. Bidding documents, purchase order costs for some materials or product. A process of gathering costs and availability of some suppliers may be sufficient. Request for information. So these are tools which are used in the bidding and terminology which you should know about. Request for information, and RFI is a less formal request for contractors to send marketing or other information on products and services, and can be used as a, usually what happens is that, let's say at an early stage, they solicit interest, and you can see it sometimes is that they are soliciting interest. They send information. Who is having, let's say I want to procure chillers, I send information, request for information. I send information to you, request for York, for Carrier, and whatever, and I tell them what chillers you have within that specified tonnage, what technology you have, and this I use it is that to help when determining project requirements before detailed designing exists. So usually it happens at an early stage of the project. Invitation to tender is that, or a request for proposal or a request for quotation. So there are alternate terms for detailed bid forms that announce to contractors how to make a bid and specify the project requirements at the level of currently detail available. So we go and ask them with a request for quotation or request for proposal. Last time we identified that, so the request for quotation is that when we know exactly what are our requirements and we tell them, okay, quote for me the installation for this much items of gypsum work with this specification. Request for proposal, I really don't know the much details into this, and I'm asking for a proposal. An invitation to tender, I'm asking you to provide me with it's a tendering process. So it's a tendering process where I'm gonna be comparing options. It's usually a more formal way than the request for proposal. We have done the execution, we hired the contractor, we checked the quality, and then now we go into closing of the projects. In the case of facility management, and let's say the finishing of a project, we accepting deliverables or occupying space involves formal review and acceptance criteria, which are the portion of the project success criteria. So we determined that for the project to be succeeded, it should be signed off by the different department heads. I have moved into a new building and I need these people to sign off. And user requirements relating specifically to the features. Let's say they have some snags. Let's say that, okay, they approved the design drawings and we constructed it. And then when they want, before the official handover, they are adding one requirement or they're not happy with the way we constructed something and they want changes. So this is the last thing, is that after we did is the project closure. And if you see here that the project closure, there's a process, say the checklist review, punch list snagging, defect repair and validation, and the final inspection or validation. The output is the accepted deliverables and people move in and I have an occupied space. Close contracts and evaluate outcomes. If I am subcontracting it, I should close the contract. So the close contract is a formal way of closing the contract. How do we close contracts usually? We make sure that the clients or the subcontractors send us that they have received all their requirements, that they have closed it and they're not having any claim against us, and that this is their final account, and they sign off and we close the contract. Closure of contracts for contractors' resources involves ensuring that all contract specifications have been met and that the deliverables meet the acceptance criteria within tolerance levels. Organizations identify and document an important concept that is repeated by the PMI and by IFMA. It's something that we call the lessons learned. Okay, every project there is a lesson learned. So after we close, we sign everything, and because IFMA and the PMI believes in continuous improvement, because we are doing always projects, so there will always be lessons learned. So it's a continued improvement. So the lessons learned, okay, they say that you should maintain a database for the lessons learned from the project. The lessons learned can be, for example, okay, next time we need to give more time for procurement because there are changing government regulations always. Or next time it's better that rather than we do it internally, the construction, that we subcontracted to a more specialized contractor, because this really led to so much delays because our team processes and team is not really capable to do that. So these are what we call lessons learned. Closure of contract involves ensuring that all contract specifications have been met and the deliverables meet the acceptance criteria. The following methods can be used. There are usually standardized closure procedures and checklists. As I said, that they should provide you with a statement of account, they should provide you with a release of liability, and so on. You can use expert judgment, contractor audit, procurement audit, and a legal review. So on bigger projects, you have commercial managers who handle these kind of things. They ensure the compliance. Documentation for contract closure may include the following: contract closure authorization, archived contract, design documentation, release of liens, documentation for lessons learned. Evaluate outcome process, so this is where the evaluation is and the lessons learned, is the most likely task to be omitted from a project, even though it provides benefits that are likely to outweigh the additional effort. The project audits, pre and post occupancy surveys and evaluations. So this is a tool for facility management where we go and survey the people. Did the office meet your expectations? We survey the department's heads. We can utilize lessons learned, the balance scorecard, and in the end they say that we should celebrate. The PMI says that on the completion of the projects, you should celebrate your successes. And some projects have commemorative gifts. We see it that there is usually in the bigger projects, there's a formal inauguration of the project where someone from the government or a big company, the head will come and celebrate the opening of the project. In facility management, usually, let's say even like they moved into a new office, they celebrated and they inaugurated officially. That was it for today for project management. Let us go through the review question. Relocation project involves moving several departments to different areas within the same facility. Which of the following team members would have specific details on user requirements?
Facility manager.
No.
Because it's in the same facility.
Yeah, on the user requirements. Is it
User requirements, okay.
Is it the lease owner, the facility manager, the design professional, or the legal department?
Lease owner.
We can eliminate the legal department. The lease owner, so if someone leased if you are renting it as Dan and they lease to the office, they will know what you need?
No.
No.
Design professional. C.
It is the
I
design.
already answered it. Yeah, design professional.
Yeah, I'm just going through the sequence. So a corporation produces long-range plan outlining its broad, high-level goals for serving its customers. So the organization in general, they are doing a strategic level for serving its customers. Which of the following is referenced when demonstrating how a facility management project is linked to the plan?
B.
Strategic facility plan.
Facility plan.
Sabaha,
Yes.
can you just please explain more the question while you are raising it? Because these questions are really tricky. It's not short questions.
In what sense you want? So here in this case, let's say for this one. So here is the key word was, and frankly, Firas, if you haven't read the material and you're not familiar with it, you will find the questions very close to each other. If you read the material and you go through it, you will find that even these similarities are addressed in the text itself. Nothing is really coming outside of the text. So here we are covering condensed material for a 2.5 hour or 2 hour session. It will not cover everything. If you go through the book, you will find that answering these questions will become much, much, much easier. Okay? So I try to highlight on the key terms. So for example, a corporation, a long-term plan outlining its, so here we're talking about strategy. So which of the following is referenced when demonstrating how a facility management project is directly linked to this plan? It's most likely the strategic facility plan. We talked about this strategy because we're talking about strategy. Which of the following could a project manager do to expedite the permitting process on a capital construction project if the general contractor is not yet selected? So let us go. So that's why I go usually through the answers one by one and to eliminate. So they haven't started the project, okay, and the facility manager or the project manager wants to expedite the permitting process. Juliet issues a certificate of occupancy. A certificate of occupancy is the last thing that you do. It's after you have constructed your project. So this is directly eliminated. Okay. B, perform the work in expectation that a permit will be eventually issued.
Yes,
No answer that you should adopt.
No, they can't do that.
Yes, no answer that you should answer in the exam which shows some certain kind of liability or legal misbehavior. So let's say, so this is something wrong. So let's say you are doing a restaurant in Qatar and you start doing the gas system before getting a permit from Mughud. You can go to jail.
Exactly. So that's why it's C. The project manager cannot expedite the process.
Not C. Look, C is, I will mark it C. Usually, Firas, if you look at the questions, usually all the questions will have typically two answers which can be directly eliminated. So your risk is reduced to half. And one question will be half. I will mark it like this. This can be correct. But let me look at the other option. The other option is provide local officials with a preliminary set of construction documents. This is a logical way and it's not an illegal way. And I think it will be more correct than the one above. That's why we are selecting it.
That's a solution. So
that's the solution, and it's not an illegal solution, and it meets the requirement of expediting without creating any. There is no legal anomaly, breach in any of this. Which of the following types of drawing would be probably used in the first design phase for line managers who want to see the layout? See, when you read questions, Firas, okay, we talk about types of drawing in the design phase. Here we talk about design phase. So the key is a design phase.
Design phase.
When you say design phase, okay, you are not actually talking about detailed drawings, right? For and who is the audience? For line managers who want to see a layout of their department. So you go and you go and talk to you want to create an office for a company, okay? You want to fit it out. You go and talk to the engineering division, okay? And you tell them, what do you need? The engineering manager will see as-built drawings. Come on, guys. As-built drawings is not in the design.
schematic drawings.
Schematic drawings. Why schematic drawings? Because schematic drawings are initial drawings. So he says in the design phase for line management.
That as conceptual drawing also?
It can be a conceptual drawing, but it's not here. So these are schematic drawings. So this is like, it can be a handwritten drawing which shows you that this is the layout that I want for you. If you approve it, then I can go into doing the engineering, and here it says construction. The key word for these answers is construction. In the design phase, you don't issue it unless you have all the preliminary items. See, like it's like when you are designing your house. Before a detailed design is done, the architect will show you a draft.
Right.
Okay, which of the following is a cost estimation method that takes cost per hour or cost per person, square meter or foot? This is a straight out definition. Which of the following elements of a project management plan requires inputs from almost all other project plan elements before it can be considered complete?
Cost estimate.
Budget.
Between these two, which one is really quality management? Not necessary from all other plan. The quality management, for example, the communication.
Budget.
It is most likely the budget. Which of the following is a method of acquiring contracted resources for a project that tends to find the best available market price so the project goals can be achieved at the lowest cost?
B.
B.
Tender. Open tender.
Open tender.
Yes. Direct negotiation is usually done when you have a preferred vendor. You might not go the lowest cost. So that's why all public projects go to open tender and open bidding. Okay. Requiring proposals to include high bid performance or payment bonds is a form of
Indemnification. A.
no.
Then definitely B.
Here you are asking the proposals to include bid performance or payment bonds.
Pre-qualifying.
You are pre-qualifying the
Pre-qualifying.
contract. Okay.
But
if they
usually
don't
you
have it,
ask for the, but Mr. Baha, usually you ask for the bid and the performance
Pre-qualifying is there in the bids.
when you select as well. So it can be also pre-selecting.
Pre-qualification is there.
yeah,
For,
but pre-selecting usually is when you are selecting certain contractors. Pre-qualification is what it requires. You are requiring the proposals. So this is a requirement before you submit the proposal. So
This is the keyword, yeah.
Okay, so always questions will have a keyword, and sometimes they are confusing. Yes, that's true, but if you go through the material, you will find them very much less confusing. Which of the following is a way to explain a tender to improve the quality of the proposals received?
bid.
D, request for information.
Representations.
Either presentation, sir.
Yeah, see, request for information, Firas, is when you go and review the material yourself as a contractor and you send an RFI. But this is saying is that for you to explain a tender to improve the quality. You are explaining it.
Meeting.
No, then select
Presentation.
the,
Yes. Again, these are direct definitions from the book. You can review it and you can find the item there. See, this is one of the answers. You will not get it in the exam, but this is the only answer where you have to select two answers. I put it there. Why is an informal walkthrough of a construction site performed?
Hello?
Yeah.
Boss, I have a doubt regarding the previous question, in which you have selected the point bidder meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
So this bidder meeting usually should happen after the pre-qualification, right? Otherwise, there will be a number of people who are bidding on this. So will that be possible?
I will verify if it's a bidder meeting or bidder presentation. Let me check the documentation.
I feel also bidder presentation, because usually when we have a big tender, we will call them to present.
I also had this doubt, but let me just confirm it. Give me 1 minute.
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Baha.
Yeah.
Bidder presentation can be in front of bidder meeting. Bidder presentation, you present it in front of people. It will be in meeting also. So
Bidder meeting is the correct one.
Just give me 1 second. Let me check it. Give me 1 second.
Bidder meeting should be the right one.
Actually, tender meeting.
Quality of the proposal.
Tender meeting is not included in those selection.
No, this is quality of the proposals received. So it should be happen prior to submission of proposal.
No, it
so
should be
bidder
during the
meeting is the right one.
During the meeting.
The people will be fine, and they won't make a huge amount of, legal.
Mr. Baha, quality of proposal.
It's bidder meeting.
Bidder meeting is the correct one.
And
Because
see, when you go through the answers, okay, you will see. Let me share the other screen with you, okay? Just to give you an example of the study process, which I, just a minute.
Back in 2016, she was director of Progressive.
Okay, let me new share. Let me share this. Where the hell is this? Okay, if you look at the answer, you can see the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can see that this is item 4. Okay, and item 4, it tells you A, and then it tells you the reasoning is from page 239. Okay, well, if you go to page 239,
bidder meeting is correct.
Okay, boss, just wait.
No, it is for assuring quality of the proposal. So it should happen prior to submission of proposal.
yeah, you are right. By bidder presentation, yes. The bidder presentation is not when the bidding people are presenting. Yes.
Bidder presentation as part of technical evaluation.
Yes, bidder presentation is when it's not, see, the guys understood it like is that where you will be presenting to the bidders. The bidder presentation is when the bidder presents their offer to the client.
And we submit the technical.
Yes, they present it. So pre-qualification or pre-selecting contractor resources can save time and money. What is this?
No, top. It's on the top. Top of that page.
Okay, here.
Bidder meeting. Yeah,
You see,
pre-proposal
guys, how
conference.
these items are defined in details. Okay, so the bidder presentation, once proposals are received. So this is afterwards. The bidder meeting is a pre-proposal. So before the proposal is done, you do a bidder meeting.
Okay, the first bidder meeting.
Clear?
Clear.
Okay. And then this is the thing, you know, this is like a preparatory code for the thing. So the bidder meeting is there. Here we need to select 2 answers. Why is an informal walkthrough? So that's why when my initial introduction, I was telling you the best way to study is to go to the questions at the end of each chapter. And then if you answer them wrongly, you can go into each and every item and understand why it is wrong and why it is correct. Okay, why is an informal walkthrough of a construction site performed prior to the formal walkthrough? So usually guys who have handed over projects will understand this. They will do an informal walkthrough. Why do you need it? What are the 2 things that are there?
To ensure site is clean.
Yes, yeah.
To ensure site is clean.
I believe, yeah.
Alpha.
Is it A and D, sir?
This is C appears.
Alpha and Charlie.
Okay.
Alpha and Delta.
Alpha is wrong because all the work appears complete on areas prepared for owner furnished items.
Alpha Bravo, first 2.
Alpha I eliminated.
B and C.
D is something you have to do before you. So if you are reaching the formal walkthrough, you must have already done this. So all the major works must have been done, and then you do this just to ensure that the site is clean and that all contractors will have been removed.
All right.
Okay, which of the following project provides validation of deliverables that need correcting?
Quality control.
Which of the following?
Quality control.
Validation.
Shoot. Yes, you are right. What's the difference between quality assurance and quality control? This is again will be covered in the quality module. Quality assurance is designing the process that you always have this assurance. So it's the process. Let's say when you finish something, it needs to be inspected. You need to submit, let's say, the RFI and all. The process itself is the quality assurance. The quality control is when you go and do the inspections and verify it. So when you say quality QA, QC, quality assurance is the process itself. The control is the execution part of it, okay? So here, when you talk about validation of deliverables, we're not talking about the process. We're talking about an inspection.
Okay.
Okay. So once formal acceptance takes place, deliverables become
the owner responsibility.
Yes, because everything accepted is handed over
And documented.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right.
One question,
guys. Yes.
One question.
Yeah.
Back again, the last one, the last question, please. Yes. Owner responsibility actually after the testing, because there is inspection. How come owner responsibility should be inspected? After inspection and after takes the approval from the consultant should be owner responsibility.
Here it says formal acceptance. Formal acceptance is after everything is done. This is where you issue in construction something which is called as the TOC, the taking over certificate. So all the inspection has been done. The defect liability has been done. So the whole thing. So the formal acceptance, the client accepts everything. No inspection. Khalas, finished, done.
Yeah, inspection done, yeah? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, boss. Thank you.
All right. Good night, guys.
Bye bye.
Thank you, boss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the topic next week? Next meeting, sir?
I don't know. Give me a second. It will be quality.
Sir?
Okay? Quality.
Quality, yeah. Okay, sir. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wishing everyone to be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Good to hear that, Samuel. You're benefiting from this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Anytime.
Actually, today is my first time of joining your lecture. It was so wonderful, very beneficial.
Great to hear
Thank you,
that. It's music to my ears to hear that you guys are benefiting. I hope everyone is sharing this experience as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night, sir. Bye-bye.